the last thing that you had to wait on? Or think about when you were a kid, what was something that you waited for desperately? One time I pulled a hunger strike because I wanted a puppy. I remember it was during the Olympics, and my dad the weekend before had rigged up some bunny ears on a black and white television in my bedroom. It was 92, I think. And I remember I was going to go on a hunger strike until I got a puppy. It lasted like 6 hours because I was a fat 12-year-old kid. And the puppy came like 3 weeks later, so I convinced myself that that's my 6-hour-long hunger strike while I was watching a very grainy black and white track and field games worked out. But also, when I was a kid, and some of y'all might remember what this was like, 37 years old. I remember there was something that I saw and that I wanted desperately. And I remember I was watching television, the commercials came on, and there was this new thing out. It was called the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I had to have one. I wanted one desperately. Does anybody remember the first time you saw a Nintendo? Like, yeah, I mean, it's just, what on earth is this thing? This is magical. And so I remember I had to have this, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I want this thing. And my mom was nice, and she said, well, let's just check and see how much it is. And I grew up with that much money, and the second mom realized it cost $99, and she's like, you're out of your mind. And so it got bad. So at one point in time, like I had never even seen one. Like nobody in my neighborhood had one yet. But there was the commercials, and I was a weird kid. And I remember I took like a shoebox and like some index cards, and I saw on TV what the games like looked like, and I tried to like draw that out and like made myself a little play with a little play. I was a weird kid. Like I had the games wrong. I remember I thought Super Mario Brothers was a different game. Like that's how it knew these things were. I couldn't, and my mom, and like as time went on, like all my little buddies started getting them. I think my parents felt bad. And so somebody in the church gave them to give me an Atari 2600, which would have been cool 6 months beforehand. But it's like, no. And I remember my friends would come over, and I had my little black and white TV. It was like this big, and you're sitting there playing like a River Raid. And I remember like, oh, when this is like old fashioned. And so like I kind of put that away. I was hidden. My parents finally came up. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and they said, okay, we got a deal with you, Chad. It's time for you to get some chores. It's time for you to learn responsibility. We're going to start giving you an allowance. We're going to give you $5 a week. And here's your list of chores. And if you get all your chores accomplished, you're going to get $5 a week, and you can save up and buy this Nintendo. So I did the math last night. Do you know how many weeks it would take at $5 a week to earn $99 to buy a Nintendo Entertainment System? It would take 20 weeks. How long do you think it took Chad to save up $100 to buy a Nintendo Entertainment System? About 2.5 years. You ready to hear the worst part of the story? Do you know what happened a week and a half after I finally had the $99 and said to buy my Nintendo Entertainment System? You know what happened a week and a half after that? The Super Nintendo came out. And my little sister got one for Christmas that year. Like, you want to talk about fair? I waited forever for that thing. I mean, I saved up as much as I could. Waiting is tough. And last week we talked about a man named Abram. God later changed his name to Abraham. And he made this covenant with him, a holy promise. And he said, listen, and he didn't have any kids, and he was already old. Like 100 years old, and his wife was old too, and they didn't have any kids. And he said, I'm gonna make a holy promise with you, and that your descendants are gonna be as numerous. They're gonna be so many, they're like the sands on the seashore that you can't even count them. And I'm gonna give you this land that you're living in as a foreigner to be your home, to be your place, to be a holy, special place for our relationship. And today, we're gonna fast forward to the other side of that story and to the book of Joshua. And we're going to kind of see a little bit of the fulfillment of that covenant. But we're going to talk a lot about waiting. So let's open up your Bibles, Joshua chapter 1. It'll be on the screen behind me as well. We're going to read verses 1 through 7. And this is the story of Joshua. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. And he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River and into the land that I am giving them. I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land that I have given you, from the Negev wilderness in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all of the land of the Hittites. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. For I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. So be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the instructions that Moses gave you. Do not deviate them, turning to either the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. So the promise had come. Last week we talked about the promise of a place. And this week we're going to talk about the place of promise. Last week we talked about what if God already has us in the perfect place and we need our eyes to be open to that fact. And this week we're going to talk about just the place of promise and what does it mean for us to live into that mission. But as I waited decently well for that Nintendo Entertainment System, how well do you wait in life? Like, how long are you willing to wait, or how long are you able to wait? Like, think about maybe when you made a responsible decision and you waited. So this is the truth of waiting. It's from the great theologian. It's known as St. Thomas of Petty, or Tom Petty. He says the waiting is the hardest part. Isn't it? Is waiting not difficult? So let's talk about the waiting that Joshua and his people had to do. Okay, so I sat down and I did some Bible math this week. Not like weird, creepy, like National Enquirer Bible math, but like looking at birthdays. And I want us to think about the amount of time that took place between Abraham, where we started last week, and Joshua, where we're finishing this week. So I got a chart behind me on the screen. So let's look at this. So you have Abraham and his son Isaac. You have Isaac, his son Jacob, and God later changed his name to Israel after they got into a wrestling match one night. Not joking. And then Jacob had 12 sons. One of his sons' name was Joseph. And then you have 400 years where they're enslaved in Egypt. And so you can really date yourself by like Charlton Heston, The Ten Commandments, or Disney and The Prince of Egypt. Which one of those you're familiar with, but we know that story. And then a man named Moses came. And then 40 years between Moses and Joshua. And so I counted up birthdays. It's the most complicated math that I can currently do right now. I counted up birthdays this week. And do you know how many years are between when Abraham was born and when Joshua entered the promised land? You're like, well, Chad, you know. Why don't you tell us? 801 years. Y'all, waiting for the Nintendo for 2 years was almost impossible. 801. That's the distance. I mean, just the distance from Abraham to Joseph, from like the great-great-grandfather to Joseph, that's 361 years of birthday. That's older than the United States of America. Okay? Then you have the whole 400 years in the desert thing that's really not talked about. Like if we do that math backwards from 2017, we're talking about 1216. Like I got on Wikipedia. It's so long ago, I didn't recognize anything cool that happened to tell you about. Like we're almost talking about like time before castles here. That's how old it is. This is like the time of the Crusades. This is when Vikings were still something you had to worry about. I mean, this is a long. Can you imagine waiting 801 years for anything? I mean, think about that. Now, if we talk about, sometimes I hear from people and they say, Chad, the Bible, especially the Old Testament, it's just so weird. It's so confusing. I can't handle it. One of the reasons it's weird and awkward and difficult is it's trying to tell a story of a promise that took 801 years for fulfillment. Let's just acknowledge the awkwardness. Like we acknowledge this is tough, this is difficult. Our minds cannot wrap around what this looks like, but apparently for 801 years there was this people God was forming that could wrap around it. Or we want to talk about why is Exodus and Leviticus. But people, like every time I talk to folks who are trying to read through the Bible, they're like, I just stopped at Leviticus. It was so weird. I can't do it. Like you want to talk about why is it so weird? It's because you have these people for 800 years been waiting for this promise. And they're trying to figure out what's going on with it. But we can understand a piece of this. Those folks knew that God had a long game strategy. And that's what they were a part of, that something was going on that was much bigger than themselves. And think about this, that you right now, and that we as a church, that we're harvesting crops that somebody else planted. You know, there's people who have poured into your life, and that you're the result of that pouring into. You might be able to name some of them, or there might be people that just prayed and instilled care upon you before you were able to understand and recognize folks when you were a couple of years old. Or there's people who, like all the 225 some odd air mattresses that you bought and we hauled down, we don't know how many folks are going to sleep on those things. We don't know how long they're going to last. I really hope that one of them gets a picture like I saw in the Baton Rouge flood of a guy who had 25 dachshunds on an air mattress, putting them across. That was just fine. That was awesome. I saved that picture. Normally it's my wife who saves dog pictures. But we don't know what's going to happen with that. As a church, this is a pretty visible thing. Every single thing that you see in front of us that it takes for us to have Sunday morning, because of our relationship and our denomination and our connection, you did not pay for any of the things that we're sitting in right now. We had $75,000 of equipment that was purchased for folks who had never stepped foot in Foundry as a church member, because they said, we believe in what's going on here and we want y'all to start off well. Like we are reaping the harvest that someone else planted. But we're also planting crops that we're not going to harvest. We planted 225 of them Wednesday, and we drop shipped 96 more of them yesterday. God's plan is much bigger than us. That's how these folks were able to last out 801 years. They're able to deal with the waitings because they realized that this was much bigger than themselves. This isn't about us as individuals, but this is about the whole world and the whole plan. God told Joshua this 3 times in this passage. He said, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. So the Hittites who live in the land said, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. So he's saying, okay, you're going to go into this place you live. Now, Abram had lived in this place. Do you know how Abraham dealt with the people who already lived there? He bought land from them. They realized, we want this guy around because he's big enough to make our economy grow. They were all right with that. Now imagine, instead you have an entire country of people coming in from across a river. They're going to have to fight for this place. Fight for this land. And God says, and the Hittites, this is an ancient people who are known throughout the whole ancient Near East for being fierce and being strong and being impenetrable. They had waited out living in this land for hundreds of years. And God says, you're going to go in and no one's going to stand in front of you. You will have the ability. You will run them out of there. So be strong and be courageous. Strength is a tough thing. Strength is something that we have an interesting way of thinking about it right now. And it's a very different way of strength than God is telling Joshua. In the last few months, I've been training with Jason Lyons here in the church. And I'm a fan now of a man named Mark Ripito. He's a professional, he teaches people to lift weights. He's also a professional jerk sometimes. But he has this quote about strength that I love, and this is what the Rip says about strength. Strong people are harder to kill than weak people and more useful in general. It's like Ron Swanson times 10, isn't it? Except he's a real person. See, this is the way we think about strength. In our world now, when we think about strength, we think about this pre-existing thing that we have earned, that it is a defense mechanism, that it is a way that we protect ourselves. We think of strong being something that's fiercely individualistic, that we should be protective and proud over. And God's telling Joshua here, be strong and be courageous. It's a type of strength that is not previously held. It's like he's telling Joshua, you're not strong enough to do this, but you're going to do this. This is a type of strength that is not something that is used individually, but it's only defined by active strength against an active force. It's held in tension. It's a dynamic. He's telling him, like, this is not a strength that you hold just to smile and feel good. This is a strength that you will have because you will desperately need it. Be strong and be courageous. And courageousness takes us even more. To be courageous is to have strength over someone or something that's more powerful than you. Okay, all week long I was thinking about this. I kept thinking about my favorite Stallone movie, Over the Top. You know, the professional arm wrestling movie? And he was a truck driver who was also a semi-professional arm wrestler. And he had a workout rig in his tractor trailer so he could work out his arm that he arm wrestled with as he was driving the trailer. You're going to be more powerful, even though you're going to be weaker. When God tells Joshua to be courageous, Joshua is commissioning him. He's saying courageousness is this is your potential future. That if you live in my world, not in your world, that you will have the abilities to withstand enemies that are significantly stronger than you are. It's God telling Joshua, you have the ability to do this. But you're going to have to grow into that ability. You know, we don't like being told that we're deficient in anything, do we? Who likes admitting to deficiencies? I don't. I'll crawfish my way out of them in a heartbeat. Just to be honest, won't you? Say, you have the ability to do this, but you're going to have to grow into it. Being courageous, it acknowledges the fact that anxiety is going to exist, that fear is going to exist, that all of the emotions that happen when we get nervous about something that we can't control or we don't know what's happening or we can't easily predict, when all that's going on, that's going to be there, that's going to exist, but I'm going to displace it and give you courage by me being here, by my presence being here, by the relationship that you have with me. I'm going to displace all those things. Be strong and be courageous. God's telling Joshua, this isn't about you, but this is about what we are going to do. The last thing that's going on is that promise relates to the practice of what's going on. I'm going to read verse 7 for you again, and just to think about this. Be strong and courageous. Be careful to obey the instructions Moses gave you, and do not deviate from them, turning either to the left or the right, and then you will be successful in every single thing you do. This is God telling Joshua, this is how my world works. You've heard me say this before, that God's vision for this world is bigger than our vision for this world. In this covenant relationship, remember how last week we talked about how with Abraham this looked like a land grant? It's like, listen, I'm giving this to you because of your faithfulness. In this way, what God's telling Joshua is, y'all are going to have to claim this. We're expanding that idea. You are going to have to claim this now. And I will always be on your side as long as you're living in my world and not your world. And frankly, the book of Joshua is a book of the story of which world are God's people going to live in. Are they going to choose to live in God's world and find success? Or are they going to choose to live in their world and find disappointment while they think they're working towards the same goal? Y'all, we can easily shoot ourselves in the foot. Okay? Think about when the last time that you messed things up for yourself. You know, I was nervous this week when I realized the flood was coming with the waters and the hurricane. I was out of town earlier this week, the family funeral, and I got that phone call, and I realized, like, man, this is just going to be a busy, busy week. Do I have the time to pull 48 hours away to take care of this problem. It was a gamble. It's like, Sunday's always coming. That's the reality of when you live and when you lead and work at a church, Sunday is always coming. And I remember sitting in the chair at my house trying to gamble. Like, do we have the time to do this? Before I realized that's a stupid question. Why am I asking myself? We absolutely have to do this, regardless of the time. But sometimes we make those decisions and it doesn't go over so well. Sometimes our own nerves or our own anxiety or maybe our own lack of experience in situations that we can shoot ourselves in the foot. And when we live in our world and try to accomplish God's mission, we're going to find ourselves in those situations. Instead, it's us trying to accomplish God's mission while living in God's world. That's this relationship that God and Joshua are talking about right now, because it's not about you, but it's about us. And that's what God's getting across. This is about God's people. That his promise is to have a people. A people that are powerful, a people that are focused on what he's offered to them and what he's asking them. See, individualization is not God's vision, but perfection is. That God wants us to understand who he made us to be and how he desires for us to live holy and sinless lives in order that we can be transformed into the person that he created us to be. It's not perfect, but it's hearts made perfect and minds made perfect in love with him. That God offers us all these things, not just so we can be happy and we can have a good life, but so that we can be energized, be taking part of this long-term strategy he has been playing. That since the very moment sin came into this world, God's like, my people are going to overcome this. And they're going to be part in me rescuing and redeeming this whole world. God's creating a people, not creating a person. We infinitely matter to him. And we're invited in to what he's doing. We read about in Paul in the New Testament writes about the fact that the Gentiles, people who are not ethnically Jewish, are grafted into this vine. They are made part of this holy covenant that we've been talking about the last 2 Sundays that lasted. It took 801 years to come true, that we are part of this mission of being God's people, and God's people have been designed to be the beacon of God's love and the bearers of God's image for the whole world to look towards them and to find the truth of who God is and how they're living. And God says, now, this happens through my son, Jesus. As Paul wrote in Ephesians, before the foundation of the world began, before sin came into the world. Think about this. Before sin came into the world, God had already designed that everyone who would love him and desire to be holy would be called his sons and daughters, would be his adopted children, adopted into this promise, into this place of mission. He's creating a people, not a person. And we realize that this is a world that's much bigger than our world. We begin to understand what that promised life looks like. So let's talk about why it took me 2.5 years to save up for the Nintendo. Now, I was 8 years old. I don't have an 8-year-old, but I've been an 8-year-old. And I know many of you in this room have had an 8-year-old before. But let's say you give an 8-year-old about $40, what happens? I remember one time we went to on vacation, and I had my Nintendo money, and my mom's like, "You should." It was in like a fake gumball canister. And Mom's like, "You shouldn't bring that, Chad. You know better." I'm like, "I'm just going to use a little bit of it." I came at Alvin's Island. Y'all ever been there before? That rat trap? Man, I had a big styrofoam glider and a shark in a jar and all sorts of this weird junk. That's why it took me 2.5 years. But also, I do remember this, and I called my mom this week because I wanted to make sure this was true. But I also do remember a time came. And I've told you this before, I grew up without that much money. And I remember a time came where my mom and dad came to me as a 9-year-old. And my dad said, how much Nintendo money do you have right now? And I was like, I have $75. I don't know how much it was, but I was pretty close. And he said, well, I'm about to have to ask you something really tough, buddy. And he said, you have more Nintendo money right now than mom and dad have money. And is there any way that we can all use your Nintendo money for the next week? And me being like a 9-year-old, I'm like, well, sure, okay. I mean, I had no conception of time. I've been saving up this thing for ages anyway. But in my weird little 8 or 9-year-old mind, I realized that this wasn't about me. This was about my family. This was about all of us together. And sometimes waiting takes a long time because you might be ready. You also might think you're ready, but you're not. But not everybody else is ready. And it matters more for the whole to live in this vision of God's mission. And it matters sometimes just for us to pull ourselves out of it. And this last week, I've been thinking about just the disaster so much. And I remember something that we talked about, though, a year and a half ago after the March flooding here, was people kept coming up to me and they said, man, I feel kind of guilty, Chad. I feel like this is really bad, but I've been having a lot of fun. Like, I feel really good right now. What's up with that? And we thought about it, and before I realized that what's going on is just us as humans, that we're just simply participating and realizing more of who God made us to be in those situations. That when we all come together as one, regardless of the situation or what put us in that place, when we recognize the power of the whole over the power of the self, that we are entering more into God's design for us and God's design for this world. We've been working together for something that's much bigger than us, working together towards the same goal. And so the place of promise isn't necessarily a spot that we want to go to, but it's also a way for us to come together and to realize that we are heading towards the same place. And that in our life, we're in the perfect place for the mission where God has us right now, but the perfect place for all of us as humans is some place that's much bigger than we are right now. And it's tough to reorient our minds to that. But you're part of the long-term strategy of God. Think about that. You're part of something that's much bigger than you could ever be on your own.